Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this meeting of the Peace River Manasota Water Supply Authority to order. It's July 31st, 2019, at approximately 9:30 a.m. At this time, we could rise for the invocation followed by the pledge. Heavenly Father, we come to you this morning, Lord, we just ask for your wisdom and knowledge to help this board to make decisions that would be the best for this authority and for the people that we serve. Lord, we lift up our men and women that protect us in services, either E911, local and state, federal officers, men and women, and those that serve us in our branches of the military. Lord, we just ask that you keep your hand of protection upon them as they do their best to protect us. We thank you for all that you do for us, and we ask all these things now in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, if we could, just let me remind everybody, if you got your cell phone, just double check. Make sure that it's turned on to vibrate or silent. And, at this time, June Fisher, our planning manager for Sarasota County, has opened remarks for us.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Wanted to welcome everybody to Desoto County. My name is June Fisher, and I am a team member in the development department. It is great to be back in Desoto County. I've been here for 8 months this time, and I say that because I've been gone for about 13 years. I worked for Desoto County for 8 years, and so I'm very pleased to be back, and I'm pleased to be here this morning. Just wanted to highlight a few things that we have going on in Desoto County right now. We have several residential developments that are on the horizon, and we look forward to those actually coming online. So we're working through some of those. But I also wanted to share with you one of the projects that our Board of County Commissioners have recently approved, and that is our NUCO, which is a pectin plant that will be located out on Highway 72, just across from the citrus plant. And they have come in with a lot of incentives for the community. They have partnered with our local college. They will be doing some training for employees, prospective employees out of the pectin plant. And this company has actually looking to invest about $146 million in Desoto County. So we're pleased to see this coming. We're pleased to see the development coming to Desoto County and seeing the growth that we are experiencing. So again, I just want to welcome you to Desoto County. If there's anything that we can do for you, please be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Okay. This time, I'd like to turn forward to Kevin Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. For the record, I'm Kevin Morris of the authority staff. And as some of you may know, my wife and I lost our son 2 months ago. This is my first board meeting back, and this is a business meeting, and we understand that, but we're also a family. And it's so kind of you to give me the opportunity to speak a little bit about our son before we get into the business of the day. Zach was just a great kid. He and his best friend Albert had gone to Peru for their senior graduation trip. They had paid for the trip with money they had earned in part-time jobs, and they got to Peru on May 24th, and his buddy Albert rented a scooter, and Zach climbed on the back of that scooter, and then a bus hit him about 3 hours later. And so you know, when a child is lost, you kind of lose the hopes and the dreams. But what we keep in mind is the values and the great things that Zach stood for, and the great works that he did while he was here. And the community has just wrapped their arms around us. Co-workers, our church, counselors, students, teachers have all just the outpouring of love and prayers and compassion has just been really, it's held us up, and we really appreciate that. Just last week we had 10 kids over to our house for for pizza. Last night we took 3 girls that Zach had rode with, and 2 of them he had dated at one time or another, to dinner. And they shared with us fresh memories that we didn't know about Zach, and pictures that were just so precious to us, and we really appreciate that. As parents, you cherish a lot of memories about a kid, and I'm going to share one with you that my wife and I remembered last week, and I know it's going to strike a chord with you. When Zach was small, if he would hear a sound at night that woke him up, or if he had a bad dream, he would sneak into our room, and he wore these Thomas the Train footy pajamas, and you could hear him scrubbing his feet on the floor as he was trying to creep in, but he'd always creep into Laura's side of the bed because he knew she would not kick him out and send him back to his room. So he knew better than, so he was smart from the get-go. One of the real transformative events in Zach's life was when he got certified to scuba dive when he was just 12 years old. And every summer since 2013, Zach dove in the Florida Keys every summer with scientists from Mote Marine and with wounded veterans from the Combat Wounded Veteran Challenge. And that's Rocky right there, who was one of his partners one year. These veterans have either lost limbs in battle or they've suffered traumatic brain injury. And Zach watched them struggle to do things you and I would do easily. And so even though Zach was still a child in terms of his age, working with these wounded veterans instilled in him a maturity that was far beyond his years. He learned empathy and he learned compassion at a very deep level. And I remember with pride the day in January when he signed his commitment to serve in the U.S. Navy. Zach had tested so well with his aptitude test and his interview scores that the Navy told him they would pay for whatever school he could get into. And so for a while, he had some of the best universities in the world competing over him. And in early May, just 3 months ago, he chose Yale. The Yale admission office told us that his college application was one of the best of the incoming class. And it made such an impression that there wasn't a dry eye in the office when they heard about the accident. They told us that Yale would always be a part of Zach, and Zach would always be a part of Yale. But Zach's story's not over. It continues through all of us that knew him and loved him and were touched by him. There's a scholarship fund that the community has helped us set up to honor the boy's memory, and we're very proud to be a part of that. Mote Marine has named a coral reef after Zach. This is a nice bronze plaque that the Combat Wounded Veterans Association and Mote Marine put together. It will be permanently mounted on the wall at the Summerlin Key Coral Research Facility. And they also are going to have another one mounted on a marble block that will be permanently underwater in the coral nursery, where Mote Marine grows out the thousands of little sprigs of coral that Zach and his friends would plant every summer on the reefs and the keys. I also want to share an example, a real positive impact that Zach has had. There was a boy that lost his father in his Scuba Knots Club last year. Suddenly lost his father. The boy was really struggling, and Zach just put his arm around him, and in a figurative sense and a literal sense, and he just built him up, and he made sure he went to the meetings, and he made sure that he had a chance to speak and that others were quiet until he had a chance to speak. He made sure he was involved. Recently, that boy told my wife he wanted to continue a research project that Zach had started. He said he wanted to make Zach proud of him. And it's so encouraging to see a sense of purpose blossom in a young man that was so despondent and so depressed just a few months ago. And the thing I really want to point out about Zach that was so unique, nobody told him to do that. He just did it. That was the way he was wired. And the guys in the Navy saw this. The veterans that we met down in the Keys that remembered Zach just said he had character. He said, we've had officers who had character, and we've had officers who didn't have character. You can't teach it. You either have it or you don't. And they said Zach would have made a great officer. So in closing, let me just say, Zach's life was short, but he made the most of his time here. He was very gifted. He lived life to the fullest while he was here. He had fun. He learned. He celebrated victories. He had the ability to laugh at himself and help others laugh as well. He was compassionate, caring, loving, and thoughtful. He made mistakes, and he learned from them and bounced back. And he also knew how to accept responsibilities for his actions, and he knew when to say he was sorry. He had a great future ahead of him, and we'll miss him every day. And Zach had a favorite saying. He would say, "It's going to work out." It was shorthand for you just can't sweat the small stuff. You just have to keep a positive attitude. You have to push forward, and you have to persevere. And that's exactly what we're trying to do right now. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about Zach and to help share the positive story of his life. And I thank you for your support, and we thank you for your prayers. You learn a lot about someone's humanity at a time like this, and Mike and Pat have just been wonderful bosses. They've been very patient, and they have been understanding, and I just want to publicly acknowledge that and say thank you. Grief is exhausting, and there's days that my wife and I go to bed early, but we don't sleep well, and we wake up and it seems like we're as tired as we were when we went to bed. And some days you feel like you're functioning at about 70%. We're not going to ever move on from this tragedy, but we will move forward. And I know we will make it with the help of all of you. With that, I thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on Zach.
Thank you, Kevin, for sharing that with us. I know it's been tough and hard. We've all had in our prayers, and we continue to. And thank you. Public comments? Is there any public comments on that card? Anybody got anything? If not, okay. We'll go to the public hearing, and we'll open the public hearing. Pat?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's my pleasure today to present to you for public hearing for consideration our proposed budget for the next fiscal year of 2020. Certainly, the budget meets with our mission and our vision of the authority is adopted by this board and the boards prior. The board materials, what you're seeing today is a summary of all the materials for the budget itself. Within your book is the actual budget, the backup materials. All these materials have been posted on the website so that your staffs, your boards, and certainly the public could review that information. The board adopted the tentative budget at your board meeting in May. That was posted on the website with all backup information. There have been no comments from any staffs, commissions, or the public, so the proposed budget remains the same as the adopted tentative budget. The budget itself, rates are consistent with increased demand in water and escalating costs. Staffing, there are 2 new staff positions to keep us current and ahead of technology. The efficiency of contract services, there was some reduction in the contract services because the additional staff can fulfill some of those duties. One of the biggest things is the continued investment in infrastructure, both new infrastructure and also making sure that we rehab and keep the current infrastructure in significant operating condition. This year, I'm glad to say that there's significant grants coming forward from SWCMUD and the state to offset member costs for projects. And the administrative building from transition from being a leasee to owner has had impact in reducing our administrative budget cost. We are an enterprise fund. We have 2 funding areas, the administrative cost, which covers the Lakewood Ranch office, and lion's shares down at the facilities with the actual facilities, operations, maintenance, technical services, and construction services. Looking at the budget itself, you can see the change from the current fiscal year with the increase of about $2.2 million. There's a small decrease in administrative costs. There again, I think we had some efficiencies in the transition of ownership of building that helped reduce some of those costs. An increase in facility cost of approximately 3%, up $2.5 million. The expenditures themselves for the budget is almost $62 million. You can see O&M accounts for about 1/3 of that. The debt service is approximately 15%. Projects, new projects. I'm glad to stand here and say that over 30% of the budget is for infrastructure and new projects. Yeah. Other cost of $5.3 million, that's inclusive of the contribution that's in the budget for R&R to maintain the infrastructure. also the CIP contribution that this board approved for common benefit projects, and also debt service coverage. So those are the items covered within that other. The available funds come from, obviously the most significant are water rates, actually the sale of water, the CIP funds that we've had, but there again, looking at grants. Grants plays a significant figure this year, with SWIFMA contributing to the cost of our pipelines that are ongoing. The reserve funds are actually program funds. It's not being pulled out in emergency. These funds are held in reserve in programs such as R&R to be utilized as this board approves. And we have $4 million coming forward of unspent funds from the current year. Our water rates are established by base rate charge, which are allocated according to your water allocations, the master water supply contract, plus the water use charge, which is the cost of water for actual meter delivery. Components of the base rate charge, we have the debt service for water supply, which is prorated out by your share of each project by project for debt service. The same with the pipelines, those that participated pay the debt service on the specific pipeline. And then we have the fixed O&M, which is the unitary rate portion of the budget that is pro rata according to your actual water allocation, the master water supply contract. So here you can see how that pro rata, the master water supply contract, is identified with Charlotte County, Sarasota County almost being equal members of water participation, Northport being a smaller member, and of course Desoto with their allocation. Looking at the water rates themselves then that are contained within the budget, you can see that we're not, because of the difference in debt service, there's a difference in how the actual base rate is identified. So you can see individually by each member and customer, what is the difference between the current fiscal year and the proposed budget for the next year. You can see those increases, approximately 3%. They range between 2 and 3% depending on the customer. The water use charge, we've had increases in chemicals that we can no longer contain without burning up reserves. So we do have a proposed increase of 2 cents. 2 cents per 1,000 gallons from 74 to 76 cents. You want to translate that down to your actual residential user of approximately 4,000 gallons a month, that's 8 cents. 8 cents on the bill. A typical bill is probably around $40 between all customers. That will keep us current without burning into reserves. The member fees are half of the member fee is calculated out 25% equally between the 4 members. You can see Northport's not a member, so they don't participate in the member fee. They are a customer. The other 50% is pro-rata to population. That is by board policy. You can see that everybody gets a slight reduction in those administrative costs. This year for the planning for the future, we have the planning and management assessments. Part of that is for the water advocacy to make sure that we continue our advocacy of conservative water conservation. We also I've joined interlocal agreement-wise with the Polk Regional Water Cooperative, and so we've allocated dollars to that for the continuation of the coordination with them, and also SWIFMA is a big component of that. But the biggest component is the planning and feasibility planning for our future water supply. We sit fat and happy today with the reservoir and water supply, but 10 years from now, we need to be moving forward now with that planning to make sure that continues in the next 10 years. How those assessments are allocated within the board book and the preliminary presentation, there was some errors in the translation of numbers from the actual documents to the slide. That has been corrected on the slide being shown publicly. All the documents within the board book and previously posted on the website are correct. The budget was correct. All the backup data was correct. There's just a translation of the numbers in the slides. So there is obviously an increase. Looking forward to, can we get a reservoir sited on the RV Griffin property for future supply? That'll be a key element to moving forward. So all in all, the budget proposed is $61,859,484. Mr. Chairman, and I turn it back for you for any comment from the board or from the public.
Other board members, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, very pleased. I appreciate all the work that went into preparing this year's budget, all of our workshop discussions, all our one-on-one meetings, and it's really in working with our staffs and our management teams. So, Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the budget of fiscal year 2020. Wait on that. Okay, I was still got public. It's a public hearing. I'll make a motion to open it. Well, you got to open it.
Yeah, well, we got, does anybody else on the board have anything? No, anybody from the public? Have anything?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay. Got a motion to close the public hearing, do I hear a second? Got a second, motion to second, close the public hearing. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay. Adoption of budget for 2020. Yes, sir.
I move approval of the budget for fiscal year 2020 in the amount of $61,859,404.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, just quickly, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Motion maker. No, just, for the people that view this, when they look at the tapes of this, it looks like we just voted real quickly on something, but they need to know there's been many, many meetings, many, many one-on-ones, many workshops to get to this point, and Pat and his staff just do an extremely excellent job on containing costs and getting us through all of this.
I have a motion by Commissioner Daugherty, a second by Commissioner Tracy. There's no further discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries now. Number 2.
Mr. Chairman, the resolution put forth sets by adoption of the resolution the rates, fees, and charges that we just adopted in the budget.
Okay. I'll hear a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
move approval of resolution 2019-05, resolution setting forth rates, fees, and charges for fiscal year 2020.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Daugherty, second by Commissioner Trace. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Consent agenda. Any withdrawals? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to remove item 8 for discussion.
Okay. I have a motion on the rest.
So moved on that.
Okay. Have a motion to second for consent agenda items 1 through 7, with 8 being pulled. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, Commissioner Daugherty.
Yes, sir, thank you. I just would like a little clarification. This is the $5 million line of credit. Pat, I just would like to understand a little more clearly as to the process on that. Most of that, 80% or more of that will be appears to be used for the filter cover project. I'm just curious as to our terms, when we make payments, and how that will be coordinated with our individual county management teams.
Okay, for your first question, the term is a 3-year term. It's going to commence on October 1st of this year and go through September 30th of 2022. It is for $5 million, and our intent is to use it for the filter covers, the majority of it for the filter covers. We can draw down and repay as we like. The interest rate is going to be 79% of LIBOR plus 36 basis points, which puts us about 2.2% interest rate right now. And the interest payments will be semi-annually to coincide with our bond payments.
The April 1st and October 1st.
Yes, sir.
Basically, Exhibit B. And again, I guess my question is, how will that payback be coordinated with our individual counties? Our allocation, our contract allocation will be our obligation by county.
Right.
As to what we pay back.
The reason we chose to go with the line of credit is to give us flexibility on how we decide to repay the line. The minimum commitment will be these interest charges.
But we are collecting funds through the budget for these projects, and we can apply that toward the interest and any extra towards the principal to keep the line low. But we have the flexibility, and we will discuss it with your staffs as to what they believe the best will be for your county.
Very good. So I move approval, do I move?
Motion to approve, consent agenda item number 8, or your second? Second. Second, have a motion and a second, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Regular agenda, water supply conditions, Mr. Richard Anderson.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, board members. Richard Anderson of your staff for the record. As usual, item 1 is the water supply conditions report. Continue to bring you good news. As Pat alluded to, we're in great shape in the reservoir and storage systems. There we go. As usual, we'll cover the rainfall first. Through July 11th, we'd only had about 2.5 inches of rain. The last 3 weeks we've had quite a bit of rain in the basin. I don't have my pointer, but we're now up over the average at about 8.6 inches of rain for the month of April, and that's through Monday. So anything we got between Monday and today, that's going to add on top of that. Rainfall obviously translates into river flow. Again, back in July 11th, we only had about 1,000 CFS. That's the green bar there on the right. As of this morning, we're well over 2,000 CFS, well above the average for the month of July. So river flows are coming up with the rain, and like we'd expect, and everything is looking great for us to finish out the wet season here. River withdrawals, as you can see on the right, for May and June, we elected not to take any water out of the system. We did have water available, but this is the time of year we'd like to draw down the reservoir a little bit, refresh it with nice fresh water here when we get the rains in the spring and summer. So we didn't take any water through June, started taking some in July. Through the 11th, we were averaging about 11 MGD. Since then, with the rainfalls, we've kind of cranked it up, and we're averaging about 35 MGD through the month of July as of today. Surface water storage. Through the 11th, we were right about 4.6 billion gallons in the surface water system. Today, we're up over 5 billion. We're about 5.25 billion in the storage system. We expect at the rate we're filling, in about 3 weeks, we'll be completely full again and topped off with the reservoir system. So we're adding about 2 feet per week right now at the rate we're pumping. So we'll be back up to about 62 feet here before the end of the month. So in really good shape. With the ASR system, again, we've been basically in storage mode since October. Haven't had the need to use the system, obviously. We did take some water out in June, about 100 million gallons, as we usually do, to do testing of the pumps and calibrate venturis and meters and things like that. But we expect to start refilling the ASR system here next Monday. So we're going to start recharging that. So you'll see that graph start to increase again at your next meeting. Overall, the supply conditions, as of the 11th, we had 4.6 billion, as I said, in the reservoirs. Right now, we're at about 5.2, 7.7 in ASR, and the graph shows 12.3, but we're actually right now, as we sit here today, just under 13 billion at 12.92 billion gallons in storage. Estimated days of supply, if you look at that, the blue upper line shows the days of storage at our average day flow of 25 MGD. As you can show there, we've got about 420 days, or about 14 months of storage at our average delivery. If you look at the contract rate of 34.7, we have about 302 days of storage, or about 10 months of storage if we had to deliver at the contract rate. Now as we switch over to production, this is for the month of June. As you can see, the authority delivered about 24 MGD to the customers in June. York County and city facilities produced about 50 MGD, total of about 74 million gallons for the month. 3.7 of that was delivered by Manatee County to their consecutive customers. So the net usage for the authority customers, just over 70 million gallons for the month. If we look at Charlotte County first, Charlotte County took about 10 million from the authority, produced again about 300,000 gallons from burnt store, total for the month 10.3, or about 54% of your allocation and total capacity was used. For Desoto County, had a really good month for June. Used only 0.39 from the authority, 0.34 from your correctional facility. Total was 730,000 gallons a day average, or about 51% of your allocations. For Manatee County produced about 44.3 MGD at the treatment facility. Self-supplied to your customers for the county usage was 36 MGD. Exported 4.4 to Sarasota, and again about 3.7 to your consecutive customers out on the coastal communities. Total usage was about 85% of your capacity. For Sarasota used 11.5 from the authority, about again 4.3 imported from others, and self-produced about 3.7 MGD from your facilities. Total usage was 19.6, or about 62% of your available supply. And finally, Northport used 2.04 from the authority, self-produced 1.4, took a little bit of water from Sarasota County, 0.11. Total usage was about 3.5 MGD, or 57% of your available capacity for Northport. And then if we roll that all up for the regional demand, as you can see, the red bar is the 12-month running average ending in June. We're right about 70.5 MGD rolling average for the regional system, and that does include water that was sold by Manatee to your consecutive customers on the coast. So looking at the total usage here and the available water, 74 MGD was delivered for the month of June, leaving 30.6 available capacity for the regional use. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Board members, any questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. Richard, go back to Sarasota County slide. I know nobody wants surprises, so I just need to inform everybody that Sarasota, when you look at their self-supply, part of that is the Carlton plant, which was last week taken out of service for rehab and will be out of service.
From talking to staff, 18 to 24 months will be offline.
So that 3.6 won't be 3.6 in the future. It'll be a lot less. Sarasota still maintains University of Wellfield is still maintained in its gardens. So the question is, number one, we've got to assure supply to Sarasota. There's no way we're not going to let them have supply. But looking at the Peace River facility and their usage plus the Manatee contract, there is adequate supply, but not a whole lot of breathing room of what exists. So we're having discussions with Sarasota County and the staff. You know, the supply is there. The question is contractually, how do we make it work in the future to assure the supply while Carlton's out for rehab? So you'll be hearing something about that in the next couple of board meetings. I just didn't want you to be surprised if the slide pops up next month. It disappeared and what happened. So I just wanted to apprise you of that so that you know, your boards will know, that we're coordinating and there will be water supply, just a matter of contracts to make sure it works.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
this was something that we debated at over the past couple of years, and that huge expense to rehab that facility is all being paid for by Sarasota County, correct?
And if I may add to what Pat said, we've been coordinating with your staff and we've had some great interactions. We did a lot of testing at the plant to make sure that we could deliver water and meet your needs. So from a water delivery standpoint, we're in good shape to supply your needs through the construction. So thank you.
All Agenda item number 2, Kevin Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So regular item number 2 is the filter covers project award. And I'm going to click through to this slide. So we have a total of 26 surface water filters. They've been constructed at various times from the late 1970s for the oldest filters that are on your far left to 1999 to 2000 for the filters in the middle, and then from about 10 years ago for the filters on the farthest right. There was a new regulation that went into effect in about the mid-2000s that required either the covering of filters or the satisfaction of disinfection requirements through some other means. So our first 2 plants, the older plants on the left and in the middle, when they were built, they were not required to have covers over the filters. When we built the regional expansion program, the filters on the right, it was a requirement, but due to budgetary limitations, we did not include filter covers because we could achieve the disinfection requirements through our storage tanks. So we were able to save that money at that point in time, but of course there are ramifications of using your storage tanks to achieve the storage, to achieve the disinfection requirements. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the advantages, but that's the primary advantage, and you'll see some more as we go through this presentation. For treatment trains 1 and 2, this is up in the upper right is a conceptual view of how the filter covers would look. It appears to be a black roof. That's simply the artist's rendition of that. The roof panels will be underside and topside coated with a Kynar fluoropolymer painting. It's going to be standard white unless we choose some other color. So it will reflect the sunlight. So it's a little misleading. It was simply for artistic effect that they showed them as being black. So again, the significant benefit of this project is the flexibility that it gives us from disinfection credit. We'll be able to accrue and account for the disinfection that we have in the free chlorine contact and in the filters themselves, rather than just what's in the storage tanks. Another benefit is just operational consistency. So we currently have to ramp the treatment plant capacity up and down to match the customer demands, because we can't let the storage tanks rise and fall the way that you would normally operate a water treatment plant. And so treatment processes typically work much more efficiently and more effectively if you can set a dose and set a flow rate and leave it alone without constantly changing those flow regimes and the dosages. So that will give us a significant added flexibility when it comes to operating the plant and ensure that we have better use of our chemicals and better water quality. And then also safety. Oftentimes the operators, we have to run the water plant even when it's raining outside, and so if an operator or a maintenance man has to go up there to maintain equipment or collect samples, which they have to do every 2 hours, this gives them some cover overhead, because when you're standing out there and you're 30 feet off the ground and you're the highest point around and there's lightning, it can be a little hairy. So once again, from a safety standpoint, putting a roof system overhead with a lightning grid protection running around it will really enhance safety for our personnel. So we put the project out to bid, and we got a really good set of bid results. You see the 4 bids we received here. The low bid was the Garney Companies at $3.8 million roughly. The engineer's estimate was $4.145 million, so we were under the estimate. That's always good. Another good thing about these results were that the 3 lowest bids were within 9% of each other, and that's always a good sign that the contractors that were out there understood the projects. There wasn't a lot of uncertainty, so it's always nice when you see the bids come in and there's sort of a grouping there. As far as the schedule goes, this is maybe hard to see, but this plots the schedule of this project from its very inception back in 2017 when we did preliminary design, and then we did the design, and then we sort of put it on hold while we discussed financing and how to pay for it. And then the red slider that you see, those years are fiscal years. So we're in July, almost August, so we're closing in on the end of the fiscal year, 2018. But the red slider is where we are today. And this schedule presumes that you will award the project. And if you do award the project, what we're looking at is a construction duration of about 20 months. 18 months to final substantial completion, and then another 2 months to finalize the project and bring it into a close. And so we would have the project completed by May of 2021. Now, one of the challenges for us is as Mr. Lehman said, the Carlton plant will be down. We can't take this plant down. So one of the challenges for us is sequencing and coordinating this work so that they can work on it without causing significant downtime to our facilities. And we believe with Mr. Anderson's top-notch crew, we've got a plan figured out where we can continue to operate these facilities as they're building the filter covers over them. One last point on this slide, and you'll see it in your motion. We also went out on the street and solicited for consulting services for construction phase services. We only received one respondent, TKW Consulting Engineers, but they're the same firm that designed it and got the permits for it. So they're in a good position to be successful on this job. So you will see them in the motions. We're asking you to. Your first motion will be to approve and authorize the executive director to execute a construction contract for the filter covers project with Garney Companies for an amount not to exceed $3.853 million, and that includes a $250,000 owner's allowance in case something unexpected should show up. Your second motion there is to confirm the consultant ranking and authorize the executive director to execute the agreement for construction phase services with TKW Consulting Engineers for the filter covers project for an amount not to exceed $275,339, and that also includes an owner's allowance of $35,000. And so those are the two motions before you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Board members, do you have any questions, Mr. Moore? If not, I'll entertain a motion for regular agenda item 2A.
Mr. Chairman, do you want the motion separately?
Yes,
Okay, motion number one, motion to approve and authorize executive director to execute a construction contract for the filter covers project for Garney Companies, Inc. for an amount not to exceed $3.853 million.
Second.
Second, have a motion by Commissioner Mayor, second by Commissioner Tracy. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries 4-1. Okay, agenda item number 2B.
Mr. Chairman, second motion to confirm consultant ranking and authorize the executive director to execute the agreement for construction phase services with TKW Consulting Engineers, Inc. for the filter covers project for an amount not to exceed $275,339.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Mayor, second by Commissioner Tracy. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Kevin. And that brings you back on the hot seat again for number 3.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So item number 3 is the Regional Integrated Loop Phase 3B Interconnect from State Road 681 or the Praymore Interconnect to Clark Road. So the Phase 3B project begins where essentially in about central Sarasota County near the central solid waste disposal facility, the landfill where the project 3A ends, and then extends northward to Clark Road. This is a location map that shows the pipe in red. Our existing pipe is in blue to the south, and you can see where it terminates now. This is about 5 miles of pipe. It will be 4 miles of 48-inch diameter pipe, and then the final mile or so will be 36-inch diameter. This is a part of Sarasota County that is facing some heavy development pressure. And so this is a timely extension of the transmission system. This will take the water all the way up, the regional water all the way up to Clark Road, where the county's line, pipeline will connect is the green line coming in from the left down Clark Road. The yellow line is a conceptual future line, Phase 3C, that we may be talking to you about over the next decade or so. This gets us one step closer to the regional vision of a fully interconnected system, tying in all the way from Punta Gorda to the south, all the way to Manatee County to the north. Again, we had good bid results. This is a table of the 4 bids that we received. Again, Garney Companies was our low bidder at just a little over $12 million. The engineer's estimate was $13.22, so we were about $1.1 million under the estimate. So again, good results. This is our project budget. Originally, we had budgeted $16.7 million total for this project. So when you include all of the engineering costs, the construction management, the design, the permitting, we're just shy of $15 million. So it's good news all the way around. It's nice to be able to bring good news to you, good news to Sarasota County, it's their pipeline, but then also bring good news back to the Swift-Mud Governing Board. They do not like it when there are surprises, and this is not a surprise. These are very good results. So always better than the alternative. As far as schedule goes, again, I apologize for how small this is. It's the same format as we saw for the filter covers. The orange or the red triangle signifies where we are today at the end of July in 2019. You can see the yellow bars there were our bid phase. The green patches above there were the pre-design and then the final design and permitting. The green bar just to the upper left of the bid phase will be the construction phase services, and then the blue is the construction project. And our construction duration for this project also is about 600 days, 570 days or 19 months for substantial completion, and then another month to finalize it. We anticipate if you were to award this today, it will take us a few weeks to put together the contracts and the bonds and all the paperwork together, the insurance documents, and get the contract signed. But we anticipate we would be able to issue notice to proceed probably by September, and then final completion of the project would be in May of 2021. So I have for you today 2 motions. Motion number 1 is to approve and authorize the executive director to execute the construction contract for the Regional Integrated Loop System Phase 3B Interconnect Project to the Garney Companies Incorporated for an amount not to exceed $12,092,000, and that does include a $750,000 owner allowance in case there should be something come up that we had not expected, and that can only be used at the discretion of the executive director. Motion 2 is the companion construction phase services, and it would be a motion to approve and authorize the executive director to execute work order number 3, construction phase services with King Engineering Associates, or I guess our Duro companies, when we see the next item that changes their name, for the Regional Integrated Loop System Phase 3B Interconnect Project for amount not to exceed $1,355,508, and that sum includes a 5% allowance for the executive director's discretion, which amounts to $64,548. And that concludes my presentation, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Other board members, any questions?
Yeah, I just have one quick one, just for our record. I'm sure you did this, Kevin, but Garney Companies has the capacity to do both projects.
Yes, we believe they do.
That's fine.
Any other questions? No, I'll entertain a motion for agenda item number 3A.
Okay, we'll take them separately again. First motion is motion to approve and authorize the executive director to execute construction contract for the Regional Integrated Loop System Phase 3B Interconnect Project to the Garney Companies, Inc. for an amount not to exceed $12.092 million.
Okay, have a motion by Commissioner Mayo, second by Commissioner Tracy. There's no further discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries 4-0. Okay, agenda item number 3B.
Okay, motion, the second motion is a motion to approve and authorize the executive director to execute work order number 3, construction phase services with King Engineering Associates, Inc. for the Regional Integrated Loop System Phase 3B Interconnect Project for an amount not to exceed $1,355,508.
Okay, motion again by Commissioner Mayo, second by Commissioner Tracy. There's no further discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries 4-0.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I have one more topic on this. It's a good thing. And I hate to surprise people, but this is a fast-moving deal. The state, in their state budget, allocated $40 million to the water sustainability fund in the current state budget. That has been in statute for the last 15 years, but they haven't put money into that fund over the last 10 years. The DEP was charged with allocating those monies. They kind of stumbled around and tried to figure out how to do that. They finally came out this week. They're going to allocate it down to the water management districts like they did in the past. So what I would propose, and John, are you listening back there? Or Swift my phone? That number one, DEP said it has to be an alternative water supply project. This project 3B is checked off as that with our funding agreement with Swiftwater. Number two, it needs to be regional. Check that one off. It's good. Number three, and most important, it needs to be shovel ready. They want dirt moving now. You just approved the contract for that. It will be. So what I was going to submit to Swiftwater, but it's much better if the board approves it, so I'm submitting on behalf of the board to request the use of Water Sustainability Trust Funds funding for this project through the municipality. I know some of the water management districts are moving forward in August with the evaluations. The district wants the money, the DEP wants the money spent, and they want to spend this fiscal year. We can do that for them. So with board approval, either by consensus or motion, that the board supports requesting that, it would be quite beneficial rather than just me as a routine request.
So moved.
Yes. Yeah.
I'll second that.
Yes. Motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign.
Thank you.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, agenda item number 4, Mike Coates.
Mr. Chair, board members, Mike Kosa, your staff. Just as we've issued a work order to King, we're going to change their name today. And this item was put on the board agenda pretty late. It was on there. We put it on there Monday, which is why it's on the regular agenda, in case there are real questions about it. This is a novation from King Engineering Associates to Ardura Group Incorporated. Simply a novation, simply just a name change. And the staff recommendation is to go ahead and do that. This would apply to all of King's contracts with us. They have contracts for engineering services on Phase 1 project, on the Phase 3B project that Kevin just talked about, and they have an as-needed contract with us, so it's across the board. Staff recommendations for approval and authorization for the executive director to execute the novation of the authority contracts with King Engineering to Ardura Group Incorporated. If there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer those.
Mr. Chairman, so moved.
Okay. Have a motion by Commissioner Daugherty, second by Commissioner Tracy. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries down.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay. General Counsel's report.
I have nothing to add, thank you.
Good job. Executive Director report.
I'll try to keep it short. Now, I just wanted to report that according to our interlocal agreement with the Polk Regional Water Cooperative, that we were to have a a technical coordinating committee meeting within the 6 months of that agreement. We held that on June 27th. It was strictly a technical meeting, no attorneys. I mean, it's at the peanut gallery, but we didn't want to talk. It was strictly to coordinate what is our planning, what are our future plans look like on both sides, so that we were informed what is looking at, and they were also informed as to what projects we were looking at. Also, at the Spokane Governing Board meeting that was held in June, that one of the proposals to that governing board approved is they did increase the Punta Gorda RO project funding by $2.2 million. It was in reference to NFL conditions to remediate, so they did increase the funding, so that was good for the city. And as you know, we're building a connection to them, so we'll be able to interconnect with those supplies. And it's also, there are also a number of open governing board seats. Two have officially resigned. Those were two Randy Maggard and Brian Beswick. So we'll be looking for replacements for those two seats. Brian did represent Desoto, Highlands, Harvey. Randy Maggard was elected to the state representative from Polk County. Pasco. I know it was a P. So he resigned. 3 members have not been reappointed, so they're not officially on the board, but they possibly could be reappointed into the future. So there are a number of open seats. Joel Slicker, who represents Sarasota, Charlotte, was just reappointed for a new 4-year term. If you know anybody, be sure to go ahead and suggest them. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions on routine standard reports? Okay. Public, board member comments. Mr. Mayo?
No, sir.
Mr. Trash?
No, sir.
Good to go. Item 2. Any public comments? Don't see none. Announcements is our next authority board meeting will be held in downtown Fort Charlotte, 9:30 a.m. Mr. Daugherty will be hosting us. Future board meeting will be December the 4th, and that'll be in Manatee County. And there's no further business to come before at this time. Just stand adjourned. Thank y'all for coming.
Orange to turn it off to?
Yes, sir.
I think it would not be.
Hey, how you doing? Maybe Mike can help?
Their house, I want to make sure. I know there's